With early voting underway, looking at some numbers from the Illinois State Board of Elections as of yesterday, there are more than 740,000 Illinoisans who've either mailed in their mail-in ballot or voted early or grace period voting. And that is of the 1.2 million who requested mail-in ballots, of the 8+ million people registered to vote in the state of Illinois. Of course, Illinois is a state, when it comes to the presidential race, is a winner-take-all state dealing with the Electoral College. But some have, for some time, said we need to change the Electoral College. There's a group of people who say it needs to be done away with. There's others who say, no, we need to get back to the spirit of what the Electoral College really is. But what is it, and why is it important? A couple of weeks ago, asked former Governor Pat Quinn about the Electoral College and what he thought should happen with that. And let's go ahead and hear his thoughts here on the Electoral College.
Yeah, the Electoral College is really something from the 18th century, and it doesn't really work in the 21st century, in my opinion. I think the best way to look at it is the vote altogether in the whole country. Every other country in the world does that. We have this sort of antiquated Electoral College that I don't think really represents the majority will. And so, to me, that's the way to go.
So, Quinn saying that the Electoral College is antiquated, and he'd like to see, direct vote of president, for instance. But what exactly is the Electoral College? Well, again, Illinois in Focus Daily here with America's Talking Network. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning. Get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. To talk about this some more, former State Senator Darren Bailey joins us and gives us his thoughts on how the Electoral College works, and should it be winner take all, or should it be proportional? Darren, thanks for taking time with us this morning. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for what you continue to do, and especially raising a question like this, because I think this is very important to the survival and the future of this republic. And as I don't see, I'm not aware of any really of the ideas of our founding fathers that I would call antiquated. I think that as we as society progresses through life, and here we are 250 years later, I think sometimes people would desire, to benefit themselves or their entity, to push something aside, and I think that's what we're fighting on many levels. Other than this, whether it's a Second Amendment, freedom of speech, on and on and on. I think it's time that we return back to these basics to preserve this republic.
So Illinois, people who are going to vote for Donald Trump, it's, I guess kind of stepping back, it's not going to change Illinois' outcome. We've got 19 electoral votes. All those electoral votes are expected to go to the Democrat, Kamala Harris, because of the Electoral College being winner take all. Not every state does that, though. You have other states, I believe Nebraska being one of them. Another one, I think Maine maybe, but regardless, most of the country does winner take all. Darren, does that diminish the votes down in southern Illinois, for instance, in a Republican-led congressional district? Shouldn't they have their vote counted in the Electoral College system?
Well, I believe so, and I've argued that on the House and the Senate floor. And Greg, I think it gets to the point that really what this boils down to is somebody has to do the right thing. Let's back up just a little bit, and we'll talk about gerrymandering. If everyone would remember, one of J.B. Pritzker's promises in his first run for governor was that he would fight for independent mapping, and we didn't see that happen at all. Matter of fact, it really somewhat got worse. And as a House Republican on the floor, I would stand and argue during these times of which these maps were being determined, and we would argue for independent, fair mapping. Well, our arguments were cut short, and I could not then argue with the Democrats, because they would stand up and they would say, well, 10 years ago, when the Republicans had control, you weren't interested in independent, fair mapping then, and they were right. So at some point in time, we've got to put all of this, we've got to think of the people, and we've got to decide, do we want to uphold this great nation, this republic? And we a lot of people really need to go back and do a serious course study on a republic. And a republic, in my opinion, I think it's obvious that it demands this, that everyone's voice is heard. And people, yes, they feel slighted, they feel cheated, they feel that their voice doesn't matter, and they're not showing up to participate because of that. And I think that is one of the very reasons that, in the days ahead, if this country, has problems, it's going to be because of the frustrations of the people that are not heard. And the Electoral College allows just that from the genius of our founding fathers.
Well, and you talk about, a constitutional republic and, the difference between that and a democracy. Obviously, when it comes to state house races, it's direct vote. In a district, your vote really does mean one person or the other is going to get elected. But when you get up to the presidential level and the Electoral College, that's really a system devised, from my understanding of the founding fathers, to make sure that large populated areas don't dominate the more rural and less populated areas by popular vote. So we're not a true democracy when it comes to a presidency. We're a constitutional republic. But again, Darren, I mean, it seems, I don't know when this happened, but states started doing winner take all with the 19 Electoral College votes. What needs to happen in Illinois? Is there a way to say we're not going to do winner take all? We're going to do it proportionally. So say, the 13th congressional district goes for a Republican, that district's Electoral College vote is going to go to that Republican. Wouldn't that be something to address a lot of the concerns people have had about, for instance, in 2020, or rather in 2016, Hillary Clinton got the popular vote, but Trump got the Electoral College vote. Wouldn't making it truly proportional address those concerns?
Well, I certainly believe that, Greg, and I guess from what I've learned, I'm going to have to lay this on the plate of the Republicans, that if people would show up and vote, and we get conservative, Republic-minded people elected, then the Republicans, then at some point in time, when if we take control of the House and we take control of the Senate, that needs to be one of the first items to deal with. But as well as I do, what happens then? Well, we're king of the hill and we don't want to give up any ground, so no one actually does that. I think it's very obvious that the Democrats, right now, that they've got everything flowing their way with mapping and with the elections, and they don't want to touch this. So at some point in time, when people begin to realize the devastation of just about every aspect of life in Illinois, and they start kind of making a shift. And I think that will happen in time. Just hasn't got bad enough yet. But when that time comes, I will be a forerunner and a front voice to my party to say it's time to take care of this. It's time to do this. It's time to link arms then when Republicans get back in control of the House and the Senate with the Democrats and say, okay, it's time to do the right thing. That's what it's going to take. And in my opinion, that's probably the only way it's going to happen.
We're talking with former state senator Darren Bailey here. And less than 2 weeks here before the election, what is it going to take for the Democrats in Illinois to, I don't know, not be the supermajority? Because right now, it looks like they may maintain their super duper majority, but what messaging should Republicans be putting out there to try to eat away at some of that?
Well, Republicans as a whole in Illinois, they need to stop compromising their message. And again, it's the exact same thing that's taking place. Well, if I'm running against a Democrat in a really tight area, then maybe I need to water down some of my messaging. And when that happens, nothing changes, nothing gets fixed. So people, just please show up and vote. Again, when I ran for governor in 2022, we knew that if 60% of the populace of registered voters in Illinois would show up and vote, we believed we could win, because that's where there are more, I guess, Republic-minded people in the state than there are otherwise, but they're the ones that are feeling pushed aside and they're not voting. And in 2022, we had a 45% turnout. So the vote really does count. George Barna here about 2 months ago came out with a pretty serious survey, and as Cindy and I, continue to travel all of Illinois and continue to get invited in churches on Sunday. The church does make up a pretty substantial voice in our nation, but unfortunately it's fallen silent. But George Barna's results showed that in the last two presidential election cycles, 40 million so-called proclaimed Christians did not vote. And on top of that, over 15 million aren't even registered. So, there's a solution that we can turn this state around. And I believe that someday when we get Illinois turned around on the right track, that I think will be a great example to this entire nation. But people are going to have to work with that American spirit. We don't give up and we don't quit. And that's going to have to be revitalized, and people to realize, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to vote in this election, and I believe we can begin to make change. I have complete faith in President Trump that he will, get this nation turned around. Nothing's working correctly today. We all know that. So it just entails people to show up and vote. And this whole idea of the Electoral College, I believe, if properly communicated, can begin to bring back faith in our election system, faith in our country, and faith in our future.
Former State Senator Darren Bailey, greatly appreciate you taking the time with me this morning to talk about the Electoral College, how it's used, and how it could possibly change. And we'll definitely connect in the near future. Be safe out there, all right?
Thank you so much.
It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Here each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us. Get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts, and wake up with us. Illinois in Focus Daily.